Rachel N. Rachel N. Now on with the tutorial. Welcome to Dark Hero Tutorials. This is going to be a interface tutorial to show everyone where everything is in Max. First, let's start off with the four screens. We have top, front, left, and perspective as default. However, if you click where the angle is stated, you can change what view you get. So we have perspective, orographic, top, bottom, front, back, left, right. To enlarge one of these views, click the view you want, and then go down to maximize viewport toggle and click, and that maximizes this view. To scroll in and out of a view, use the middle mouse button. To unmaximize the view, click the maximize viewport toggle again to get the four views back. Over here on the far right, we have the curate option. In this option you can create geometry, shapes, lights, cameras. That's the only four we're really going to cover during any of the tutorials, as we will not be using any of these for games. So let's start by creating some geometry. As you can see, in the standards primitives we get basic shapes: box, cones, spheres, geospheres, cylinders, tubes, choices, pyramids, teapot, and plane. Next to the geometry button here we have the shapes. This is where we have all the splines. I'll be doing a tutorial on splines later on. Let's go back to geometry. Now, to create an object, you can do it either two ways. One, you can click the selected or the shape you want. Sorry, left click on the 3D space and drag. And then drag up. And there is your box. Or you can go into keyboard entry, which is here, click the little plus, and you can enter manually the size you want. So it's going to add 16 by 16 by 16, create, and there's our box. Now, if we right click the box to edit this box, we right click, convert to editable poly, and now we go into the modify tab. This is basically your object stats, so you can rename it a box. You can modify it using all these modifiers, which I'll be doing a tutorial on later on, or you can edit the geometry by hand using the vertexes, which are the little points as seen here. They turn red when selected and blue when unselected. Edges, which are the lines between vertexes. Borders, which I will show you in a minute. And polygons. If I just delete this polygon by clicking on the polygon, delete. A border is the ring of edges around an open space. To bring the face back, press Ctrl and Z. And Z again. There we go. That's all that. Right. So I want to move this vertex, change this geometry. Up here we have widgets, which is your controls over what you're doing in Max, or controls over the geometry. So we have the movement widget, which is shown by these arrows. Depending on which arrow you click, depends on which direction the geometry will be pulled. Each arrow has a different color, which tells you which axis you're pulling. This may change depending on how you've rotated the geometry, but its standard is Z is upwards, and then X and Y are off to the sides. There we go. Now the rotate tool, if we get out of edit polyp mode by just clicking the blue flashy editable body button, the little dots disappear. So if I click it, dots appear. That's how you know. So if the dots are here, you're in editable poly mode. If you click off it, you're not in editable poly mode. This basically means you're in object mode, and which means I can't change the geometry. I can no longer use the vertexes or anything unless I click them here. The rotate rotates the object. Same again. You just rotate by clicking on the different axis, indicated by the different coloured wheels. If you want a more accurate turn, you can click snap toggle up here, indicated by the magnet with the rotate, and that rotates it every 5 degrees. Finally, we have the scale. This is non-uniform scale, but if I click and hold, we get more options. So I can scale in one direction, 2 directions, or the final one, if I scale it in one direction, it scales it negatively in another direction. So let's go to the second one. The most useful one is the second one here. So if I can click either on the axis, like we did with the move tool, I can click on the axis themselves, in which case the only one line will go yellow. So I can scale it in one axis. I can scale it in 2 axes by dragging the mouse over between the 2 axes, which will scale it in 2, or I can click in the middle and it will scale all 3 at once. One final thing, I'm going to show you the render button, which we'll be using in later tutorials, which is this teapot here. And that produces your image of what your geometry will look like. A bit of a mess by the looks of it, but that's the interface. I hope you've learned a lot from this tutorial. I'll be doing tutorials on actual modelling later after my hand-ins are done. That's Dark Caper. Thank you for listening.